Good morning. Or maybe when you're watching this, I should be saying good evening. Either way, hope you're well. We're going to make this lesson short and to the point, so stay focused. Our target today is I can write the equation of the perpendicular bisector to a line segment. So let's really look at those two very key words, perpendicular and bisector. Two words that we have already learned about and we're going to put together. So think, what does a perpendicular line look like? Perpendicular lines, the symbol looks like an upside down T. It makes right angles. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes or negative reciprocals. And think back what it means to be a bisector. Bi means two. It's like you're dissecting it into two equal parts. So what do you think you have to do to find the bisector of a line segment? What formula do we use to cut something in half? I bet you just thought of the midpoint formula. And if you did, you're correct. Midpoint formula. So it's a nice review of two concepts. Remember to pause the video to take notes as needed. We'll be here when you get back. All right, let's write the midpoint formula. We're finding the distance. All right, so x plus x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2, comma, y sub 1 plus y sub 2 divided by 2. Whenever you divide something by 2, you're cutting in half. All right, so let's go to the question. How can we find the perpendicular bisector for the line segment with endpoints -1, 4, and 3, -2?
I'm just going to do a little sketch if you don't mind.
I find that always to be helpful, Mrs. Talhami. So you put those 2 points, -1, 4, and 3, -2, and that's the segment that you created.
So, Miss Murphy, can we think about this, what it should look like before we actually do the math? So let's talk about what it should look like. If I'm going to be a perpendicular bisector to this orange line segment that you see in this picture, essentially we need to be passing through the middle. So the middle might be somewhere over here. And it has to make a 90-degree angle. So this is kind of a sketch of what our goal should look like. This is what it should look like. That's our goal, is to get this equation. So you should already know that the slope should be positive.
Positive.
There we go. And that should be helpful. Sometimes a little sketch to know what your goal should look like could really let you know if your answer is correct or incorrect. Okay, so let's do the steps that Miss Murphy just discussed at the top here. The first step is to work with the perpendicular. So let's get the reciprocal slope, the opposite reciprocal slope. And then the second step would be to do the bisector and get the midpoint. Then we can use those two to find the equation of the line. So go ahead, Miss Murphy, you could start us off here.
Great. I always like to label my points x, y, x, y. And since we're finding the slope of those 2 points, we will use the slope formula. Change in y over the change in x, or y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so we're going to do -2 minus 4 over 3 minus a -1. -2 minus 4 is -6. 3 minus -1 is 4. And we're going to reduce by 2's. So 3 2's and 6, 2 2's and 4. It's a negative slope. So if that slope is -3/2, then a perpendicular slope would have to have the opposite sign, so it would need to be positive, and the reciprocal would be 2/3. So now we have perpendicular slopes.
So that's the first part. Very good. Now let's work on the bisector part.
Okay, so we're going to use our midpoint formula. As you can see, the two steps are in two colors. Replacing the values in the formula. Okay, however you want to simplify it, you could use your alpha y equals, you could do the math in your head. I'm going to do it in my head. -1 plus 3 is 2. 2/2 is 1, comma. 4 minus 2 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So our midpoint is 1, 1. Wow, Mrs. Talhami, when I look back at your graph,
Yes.
you were pretty much spot on with that 1, 1.
Oh, yeah, pretty close.
So our answers are reasonable. It's always nice to check the reasonableness of our answers. All right, so let's go back to what the task is. It says, how do we find the perpendicular bisector for the line segment with these endpoints? All right, so do we put these two facts together now, Mrs. Talhami?
Yeah, so Miss Murphy, the idea is, and that's why I started with the green, is that our goal is to get the line that's dotted in green here. It should have a slope of 2/3, which is what we just discovered, and it has to pass through the point 1, 1. So we know the slope, and we know a point, so that means we should be able, using this as our x and y, and using this here as our m, we should be able to get the equation of the line, but we first need to find b.
Yes, we do. Okay, so let's replace what we have. So for m, we're going to replace it with 2/3. And for x and y, we're going to replace it with 1 and 1. So 2/3 times 1 is 2/3 plus b. Subtract 2/3 from both sides. 1 take away 2/3. Well, if you have a whole and you're taking away 2/3 of it, you're left with 1/3. So b equals 1/3.
So this is now important because our final equation
Y equals 2/3 x plus 1/3. That is the perpendicular bisector. That is that green dotted line, our goal line. And that's all, folks. That's how you create a perpendicular bisector.
Great.
Please make sure you take notes, stop the video, write it down, so when you go to do your castle learning, you remember the steps needed, what it should look like, what your point is, or what your goal is, I should say.
So there will be a few practice questions for you to try, and we will have an answer key for you. If you have any questions, you know how to reach us. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.